And welcome back to another episode of the Paranormal Portal. Glad y'all can join me. Thank you very much in moving into this late Halloween season. Oh, oh, oh. That's my wicked scary laugh. That's all I can manage. Sorry. That's all I got. Hope y'all are doing great. Thanks again for coming and joining us and being a part of the show. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, Paranormal Portal is our forum to talk about all things paranormal, and this is our season. This is the paranormal season of Halloween, and this used to be a topic that was saved for, the quiet talk between close friends or just confidants, and don't tell anybody, but this is what happened. And people left to suffer alone in many cases because they couldn't share it. And, they've been confronted with these occurrences that defy explanation. They defy physics. They defy what we understand about our world. And so, it's a different experience. And I'm glad that the vocabulary has expanded, that we can have a show like Paranormal Portal or like, Ghost Adventures or shows like Coast to Coast, George Norian, et cetera, Beyond the Veil. We are having this dialogue now, which I think is really cool and important. And I'm glad that it's become more accepted. And actually, just before the show, I heard that little tidbit that I thought was really cool. Is that 1 out of 5 people have claimed to have experienced a ghost. I believe I heard that factoid correct. I was kind of in the process of organizing my notes and stuff, but I think that's great. I think that's, the awareness is raising for us, and I think that's a cool thing. And I think along with that is probably some of the growing pains we're experiencing. The people that may not have been quite as politically active are now becoming politically active, and they're also becoming pissed. They're becoming pissed because they realize now that they've turned off their TVs and they've started reading the news and doing their due diligence, they're realizing how screwed up things are, and they're like, oh my God, So maybe that's part of it too. But anyway, that's my little diatribe on the subject, and I don't mean to digress into it, but God, just be nice to people. Be nice to each other. Treat each other with respect, because, we all believe different things, and that's okay. It's okay. We all have different religions. We have different ways of looking at the world. And if you put a rose in front of 200 people, there would be 200 different roses observed, and that's fine. That's great. It could be the same rose, but everybody's going to see it a little bit differently, and you got to respect that. So anyway, welcome again to the show. I do welcome call-ins and people to be on the air and share their experiences. Tonight, as I was saying in the chat room, if you'd like to be a part of the show, I should go over this first. Please feel free to call in. The phone call-in number is 866-37-TRUTH, T-R-U-T-H, 866-37-TRUTH, and that's 866-378-7884. For those like me who don't like trying to spell on numbers with 3 letters assigned to them, and it gets really confusing. Make it simple. So that's the simple. It's 866-378-7884. So please call in if you got something to share. I welcome the experience. If you got a Halloween tale, a ghost tale, a weird psychic tale, I don't know, whatever your experience is, please share it. I'm happy to hear from y'all. And additionally, if you'd like to share your experience but don't want to be on the radio, you don't want to be talking, you don't want to be in front of everybody, then please just go and drop an email to email. Come on. Really, Brent? Sorry. I'm a little scattered, but if you email, please email paranormalportal4u, number 4 letter u at gmail.com, and share your experience with me. Tell me, what happened. If you want me to hide your identity, I'm happy to do that. But you don't have to speak on the air. You don't have to be identified. Just, I would appreciate it if it's your story, or at least it's something you observed or at least once removed. But, if it's something you heard this one guy talking about one time on a bus when you were, with your cousin or something, it's probably not going to have the same gravity, and it could be anything. So yeah, make it your story. And otherwise, come on to this website, truthfrequencyradio.com, and join the chat room. Amazing people, and they're great people. I've always enjoyed the conversations I have in there. A lot of people that have become friends and have really helped to make the show great and contributing, and I really appreciate their input. And so stop by the chat room, get a chance to meet people, and I'm on there as well, and I will do my best to respond as I can two things in the chat room. But right off the bat, I see we have a caller, so I'm going to take this call right away. We'll see what's going on. Hello, area code 928. You're on the air.
Hello, hello. You hear me all right?
I can hear you great. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, I'm calling about something kind of related to what you were talking about the Freemasons. Now, I have found spirals of less gravity than the normal on the face of the Earth. One of them is at Giza in Egypt, and now Richard Hoagland actually found it first, but he didn't label it as a spiral of less gravity, and it goes directly over the peaks of the three main pyramids there. Now, over in our hemisphere, the spiral that I did find starts at Corkscrew Marsh in Florida, and it grows like a Fibonacci golden mean spiral, like a, by a factor of pi. And as it grows, it goes right over Coral Castle, where that little guy built that huge castle with 100 pounds and 5 foot tall. And it also goes over the Florida Keys. And I believe that the less gravity than normal drew up the islands to cause them to become keys. And they also, in Egypt, drew up the area to become a plateau. Shall I continue?
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, this is very interesting information. I should probably tell you that this is I think you're responding to the topic on the last show, which was Beyond the Veil, but this show is called Paranormal Portal. But nonetheless, I find what you're saying absolutely compelling. So please continue.
Yes, this does have to do with paranormal because these spirals can actually affect the mind as well. If you trace out the spiral that's in Egypt, you come out to some wild, seemingly crazy places. Like, for example, one place suspected to be the real mountain where Moses went up to get the law. And as it grows further and takes another turn, it might even go over Mount Ararat in Turkey, where Noah's boat was supposedly came down. Whereas over in this hemisphere, the Florida spiral goes up to the coast of the Gulf of Mexico and then out again over water near Washington, D.C., I believe, but it goes over the Bermuda Triangle, and then when it touches land again, it goes through 2 or 3 of those step pyramids in Central America, and it also may touch the monuments near to Mexico City as it starts to turn north again. And I believe it ends up at Yellowstone National Park. Now, the source of these spirals is that each planet has less gravity at its equator than the rest of the body, and this becomes a ripple in what Einstein called space-time. It is this ripple that gets transmitted out. But if I want to condense this, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, and say that if people get into checking these spirals for less gravity, I urge anyone, go to Corkscrew Marsh in Florida, or the Keys, or Coral Castle, and check for gravity anomalies, because I'm darn sure of what I say. Anyway, I wanted to give people my blog, if that's okay. It
sure,
is
go ahead.
The Once and Future Osiris.blogspot.com. Okay, having said that, if I can keep going, the reason why I say this is of the mind as well is because these spirals are actually touching all 26 dimensions of string theory, and they do affect the mind. In one way, you can see these spirals as kind of like an entity unto themselves, which have a view of themselves as not being spirals, but as a straight line, whereas the earth below is perceived as being flat. Now, the mind connecting to these spirals might come to actually think that the earth is flat, and I think a lot of people who ascribe to that theory may have touched with their minds this line sometime in their life, just as that little guy, that Edward Leeskalin in Florida, was able to somehow tune into that lesser gravity than normal to go ahead and build all those wonderful, huge coral blocks in his castle. Now here, talking about the temples, this is, I was a radioman and a cryptographer in the Navy for more than 10 years, and also cross-trained in electronics repair. After the service, I went to college, and then after that, I went and lived in Israel for about 8.5 years. And I never stopped studying, and I have formed a kind of a synthesis between religion and science. I see that the myth of Osiris is like an ancient body of knowledge, the body of Osiris, one that connected science and religion together in one package. I believe now Moses was educated as a prince of Egypt, and this, I think, was what he was referring to when he said, "The Lord our God, the Lord is one." That is to say, it's all one thing. It's all interconnected. It's all one unity. You see?
Oh, sure, yeah. It's absolutely
and
compelling.
Then see, it's science and it's religion both. People have a very difficult time with this because in our modern minds, well, our minds going back through ages, we've always had these things divided up, you know. And here's another thing about the universe. It is redundant, just as Richard C. Hoagland says it is. What we have in Mars, in Monument to Mars, the first one facing the east is the crater with the tetrahedron on the rim, and the second one going toward the west is the elongated and distorted face, and then the huge face of Mars. Whereas here in Arizona, we have the Winslow crater, and the next one going toward the west is the San Francisco Peaks, and then after that, the Red Rocks of Sedona, where people go to meditate, swearing that there is a power structure there somewhere. And I can't disagree with that. I see Red Rocks of Sedona, red Mars. I see Sedona and Cydonia as related because, again, these things are of the mind as well. And if you go back toward the east further, then you run into something very interesting at Chaco Canyon over in northwest New Mexico, and I'm not sure if it's on the same line, but I know that Chaco, they have mounds and mounds and mounds of broken up pottery, and I believe this is from conscious sending out a call, because the traditional view of tribal peoples is that when you make pottery, you ensconce part of your soul within that pottery. And then they would break the pottery, send out their call. This is the conscious one. And see, the subconscious is the activation of the pineal gland, which occurs after 3 days of being in perfect darkness or going without sleep. I experienced it once when driving across the country without sleep. And in Chaco Canyon, they have some of those buildings are rooms within rooms, so that if a thick enough roof was placed upon it, it would be in darkness, so that they could open pineal gland. And this is also the secret of the king's chamber in the pyramid, that the sarcophagus was a sensory deprivation tank, that the adept would lay in there in water and salt to where he was buoyant. And you see, the radio works by a carrier frequency and then modulation. The spirals on the face of the earth can be considered a form of carrier frequencies. And then the modulation of those comes from the subconscious call of anyone who either opens their pineal gland by going without darkness or sleep, and or does the pottery, sending out the conscious call. See, I'm talking about religion and science put together. Sure. This is the problem with a lot of minds today. Having Hiram Abiff is the guy that built the temple in Jerusalem, and he was murdered for his efforts. You can read about it. It's in either Kings or Chronicles, one of the two. Anyway, the reason why he was murdered is because he knew it as a scientific basis, and the powers that be did not want it seen in any terms of science. They wanted it all about religion. The thing is from what I read about 3 decades ago about the Philadelphia experiment, now being a radioman, I would focus in on this. They said one of the key frequencies there was 450 megacycles. Well, one wave of 450 megacycles is just a touch over 26 inches. And right away I keyed into that because that is pretty darn close to cubit and handbreadth. Now, I know that cubits and handbreadths were different all over the Mediterranean region, but what I am saying is there was an idealized cubit and handbreadth that only the in crowd, the Freemason guys knew about, and Hiram Abiff, I believe, was using that as his base measurement to turn the temple into a resonant cavity, okay? And also, there is another line, and I cannot get the Israelis to look at this. I have tried and tried. There is another line of less gravity that goes through Jerusalem, right through the Temple Mount, right through the Holy of Holies. And this is why when the Ark of the Covenant was installed there, you had the smoke and clouds coming off of there. It had to do with the resonance achieved. between the Ark of the Covenant and being on that line, you see.
Wow, that is amazing. Now, I think you probably have an encyclopedia of information that you could probably give us if we had the time. What I would like you to do, though,
Yes, that's why I kept asking you to see if I can go.
Oh, sure.
Because
no,
I didn't want to, hog your time up.
No, it's been absolutely amazing, and I really would love to hear more of what you have to say. What I would like to do is have you.
Can I get my website now, please? That's a real short one. It's SidoniaResurrection.com.
Okay. And if you would please email me at paranormalportal4u, the number 4 and letter U at gmail.com. What I would like to do is set up an interview for you.
What's your name again, please?
The email is paranormal, PARANORMALPORTAL, number 4, letter U, at gmail.com.
Paranormal, and then portal.
Portal, and number 4 and the letter U, and then at gmail.com.
Okay, for you, okay, and then .com.
At gmail.com.
And wait a minute, don't I have to give a name and then at?
Yeah, that should have been Paranormal Portal for you at gmail.com.
At gmail.com. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Will do. Yeah, I've got a book out there. They'll see it if they go to the website or the blog.
Okay, wonderful, and we'll be in touch, and we'll try to schedule something to get you on the show, and we can do a full discussion.
Oh yeah, I'd like it very much. I've been decades and decades. I'm 69 years old. I've been working on this book. I worked on it for 22 years.
Wow.
So I had notes from 20 years. So
awesome.
Yes, we got a lot to talk about.
All right. Thank you for calling in, sir.
Pleasure, and thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Bye bye.
All right, take care. Well, that was absolutely fascinating. He's clearly one of those guys that has so much information in his head and has so much to share and could just go on and on and on. It's just, wow, that was phenomenal. We'll get him on the show and we'll do a proper discussion with him and try to get our heads around all of that. That was a whole lot of information in a very short period of time. But anyway, tonight's show I figured would be good. I did have an interview lined up, and but the interviewee had to cancel. So tonight we're going to do a carryover from last week's show and continue to talk about the Halloween season. It's now upon us. Hope you got your pumpkins carved and your costume fitted and figured out. I don't know what I'm going to go as. But my little boy's going to be a little Frodo. It's really adorable. My wife took pictures of him, and he's just amazing. One of those proud dad moments. But anyway, additionally, I hope you get a chance. Come over to Facebook.com/Paranormal Portal Radio. Check out the Facebook page. Follow it. I also have a Brent Thomas Facebook page as well. You can friend me there and follow the show. I've been posting videos up there that I think that are at least interesting, at least compelling, and thought-provoking. I don't, again, claim to know that all of them are real, but I think they're at least compelling to look at and interesting to review, and hopefully they fit the season. So stop over there and check it out. Again, follow us over there. And I don't have any kind of Twitter yet. I never have quite got my head around Twitter. So everything I have to say is much longer than what Twitter allows. So unfortunately, I'm not very short-spoken. But anyway, we're going to dive into the material tonight. First thing I wanted to read to you guys is we only got 5 minutes until our break. So let me see. I think I can get through this in 5 minutes. Okay. So what this is this was sent in by a listener. And it's called Witness to the Paranormal. It's basically an article from www.twoacorn.com news, and it's Witness to the Paranormal. So it starts out as this. In this season of All Things Spooky, now is the time to share some local lore about the strange phenomenon in the area. And apparently this person's talking about a show Paranormal Witness had done an episode, and it was called The Pit. and it featured a tattoo artist that lives in a haunted house in Santa Susana Knolls on the edge of Simi Valley. And she ended up meeting the people and going over there and doing an interview. So I met with Danielle Oberosler, who was 45, and her friend Hannah Tech, 32, in September at Oberosler's home. I asked to conduct the interview in the guest house because it was said to be at the heart of all the paranormal disturbances. Right off, Tech asked if we could go into the main home instead. Things happen if we talk about occurrences in here, she said. There was a brief period of time when it was so scary, but I got used to it. On the show, several friends of the Oberosler stayed in the guest house and would experience the bed shaking, noises that couldn't be identified, and some physical attacks. Oberosler shrugged off their experiences as exaggerations until Tech moved in on a semi-permanent basis. Tech said she is regularly touched or grabbed in the guest house and has seen apparitions of men standing by her bed. One time when she was walking towards her closet, all of her clothes were suddenly thrown off the hangers. The women believe that 3 distinct ghosts haunt the guest house, but when the house smells like sulfur or the temperature suddenly drops to freezing, the women believe a demonic presence has taken hold, which is true. That would be a demonic indicator. Oberosler said there are strange occurrences in the main house as well, but they are different than what occurs in the guest home. She says mischievous spirits inhabit the main house and mess with her periodically. Sometimes she hears growling noises. Not a good sign, by the way. She has tried to get the house cleansed by psychic mediums, but for reasons she cannot explain, the mediums never quite make it over to the house. One medium ended up in the hospital on her way to the house, and others called to say they're on their way and never made it, she said. Oberosler has come to believe a story from the paranormal crew that studied her home. They said a biker who used to live in the house tortured and killed a young woman in the guest house. The women have been searching for evidence that the murders took place and continue to dig out a section of the guest house looking for clues. We are absolute believers, Oberosler said. Sometimes I think there are things in the world we can't explain. Which I would agree with. Now, though, we did that. We got that through that. Okay. Yeah, if you ever hear growling or smelling sulfur or smelling rotting, stinking pockets of air, and you know your house is clean, if your house is dirty and you're smelling rotten and stinking, you need to get a new mop or something. But if your house is clean and you know you're catching these odors, these are definitely signs that it could be a demonic type of infestation. And I know the people throw around demonic all the time. What's demonic? It's demonic. It's demonic. That term gets overused in the world of the paranormal. It's I don't believe there are quite that many demons running around in almost an omniscience of, oh, something bad happened, it must be a demon, you know. But anyway, we'll be right back after this break, and we'll continue our plummet into the paranormal. Be right back.
Breaking apart, controlling me, controlling me.
And welcome back from break. Hope y'all are doing great still. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for sticking with us. We are only 1/4 of the way through the show since we're in the new 2-hour format. Hope you guys are enjoying that too, by the way. I know that I had some requests to extend the show, and so we've done that, and I hope that it's been well received, and I hope y'all are sticking with us for that second hour. It's really always been the highlight of my week to do this, and so I was thrilled that you guys wanted more, so we gave you more. Now you got me. And the Paranormal Portal, of course. So moving on in our stories, the next one is called Haunted Hatpins. I don't believe this. This is a different story. So it was in that same article that I was just reading from before, so we'll continue on. Kathy Coleman, an artist and old Agoura resident, it's old Agoura resident, shared a ghostly tale from 1978. When she and her husband, George, were newly married and living in Queens in New York City. Eventually, they found an old abandoned home that was for sale at a price they couldn't resist. Usually abandoned homes go cheap. Coleman said that she was surprised the custom furnishings in the house remained, including an antique grandfather clock. Nothing was stolen because nobody would go in there, Coleman said. Kids knew it was haunted. Coleman, a collector of antique hat pins, said there was a period when she would find hat pins littering her stairway. She wondered how the pins kept appearing on the carpeting stairs when she kept them in an old locked Singer sewing machine cabinet in the attic. That was odd enough, but Coleman swears that what happened in her bedroom was even stranger. I assume she's talking about the ghosts. Sorry, it was cheap and easy. I couldn't resist. One night in my bedroom, while I was shoving my arm through the bathrobe sleeve, hat pins started to fall from the ceiling, she said. How it happened, she could not fathom. Another time, a hat pin was found on the driver's side of her car. The pin stabbed her sister-in-law. Ooh, that would not be good. Coleman said other ghostly phenomena happened in the house, including periodic paranormal scents of lilac and lavender perfume. It was a very Victorian scent, she said. And once in a while, acrid smells would suddenly rise from somewhere. Coleman's husband was not necessarily a believer, but he has an open mind. There's more we don't know. There's more we don't know that we do know. What? There's more we don't know than we do know. Oh, okay. There's more that he doesn't know than what he does know. Gotcha. So those are two of those articles. Thank you again to the listener that sent them in. We'll call her Jane. I appreciate that. That was phenomenal. I love it when you guys contribute material for the show. It really is. It's fun, and it's lets me know you're out there listening. So if you find any articles or any stories that you think need to be shared, I do encourage your own personal testimonies. But if you just come across a story you read that was really cool, send it in. I'd love to read it as well. So continuing on, go to my other bookmarks here. So I wanted to go over these. These are quick little blurbs, but it'll cover a lot of really cool ground and things that I wanted to cover, and perhaps they all could deserve a show on their own. But we'll go over them anyway. I don't know that they're all they're all legitimate again. So please, anything you hear, whether it's from me or from wherever on TV shows, just weigh it with a grain of salt. If it's something you can get your head around and it seems right, yeah, it could be right. If it seems like it's too fantastic, probably is. For you personally. I'm not saying it can't be real, but it doesn't mean you have to subscribe into everything I read. So bear with me if I ever cover stories and you're like, oh my God, whatever, really? So the first one is this quick stories is called the Facebook ghost, and this is the one that I have a harder time wrapping my head around. Not that it's not possible, but I would think that if it were indeed true, then we probably would have heard about it, or there would have been some kind of serious investigation into this. But anyway, on face value, I'll read it to you, and you can be the judge. So last year, a young man named Nathan revealed he was receiving Facebook messages from his girlfriend, Emily. So why was he so terrified? Because Emily had died in a car crash 2 years earlier. She began by recycling and resending old messages which Nathan dismissed as a bug, but then she began tagging herself in his photos. And then all of a sudden, Emily used her first original word. And they show a screenshot of a conversation that apparently happened where Nathan appears to be typing to her old account, which must have still been open. It says, Nathan says, "I'm really drunk. I miss you. Whoever's on this account, I don't give a F. I keep coming home from work expecting to see you at the computer. Shouldn't I be used to that by now?" And allegedly, Emily responded by saying, "Ust, let me walk." So I assume she was trying to say, "Just let me walk." Just a few weeks later, Nathan, in a drunken act of despair, reached out to what he believed was his girlfriend's ghost, and he received the following message. It's L***, and then -12 and -15. And the next one, she says, "My jumper's in the dryer and it's really cold out. Really cold out. Cold, cold. Nathan, please stop. L or an I, and then a star, *. Cold, freezing. I don't know what's happening. Nathan revealed that the "just let me walk" line left him chilled for more reasons than one, saying, "In the collision, the dashboard had crushed her. She was severed in a diagonal line from her right hip midway down her left thigh. One of her legs was found tucked under the back seat." So that's all kinds of creepiness there. And there is a link to follow the full story if you wanted to read more. But this is on lifestyle.one. The next one is The Exorcism of Annalise Michael. It says, "Did you know the hit horror movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose was based on a true story? Whilst there was never an Emily Rose, there was an Annalise Michael. According to numerous reports, the young girl was afflicted by intense shaking and loss of control over her body. Confused by her symptoms, doctors diagnosed her with grand mal seizures, but her behavior grew worse. She began attacking family members and drinking her own urine. Most tellingly of all, she seemed very afraid of religious objects. Her concerned family eventually convinced priests that they went on to perform multiple exorcisms. Annalise died in 1976 of pneumonia before the last exorcism. There'd been 40 by that time. Could be performed. And her story is pretty well documented in the movie, but it's the thing with exorcisms. I mean, the Hollywoodization of it would say that, a priest walks in, says a bunch of stuff, and ties him to a bed, and bam, it's over. But in truth, many serious exorcisms do take place over weeks, months, and potentially years. This, depending upon the entity that's causing the problem and the power of that entity. They don't necessarily like to be driven out, apparently. But that's a tragic ending to that tale. And the next one is and now this is a story that I'm pretty well familiar with because I did research this a bit. And it's the unexplained ghost story, The Death of Eliza Lamb. And I'll read the story and then we'll discuss it for a few minutes because this one really bugs me. It's really tragic. And if you ever get a chance, you look for the YouTube video of Eliza Lamb, Elisa, and the last name of Lam. And she was a Canadian, I believe, possibly originally from China, but I think she was in Canada visiting or in the U.S. visiting, and had encountered a really weird experience and ended up dying. But this unnerving elevator surveillance tape, and there is elevator surveillance tape of her acting really bizarrely, and you can watch that, and it just seems so horrible because clearly she's afraid of something. But and the you can see her get in the elevator and peek out and like start pushing buttons to get going, and the elevator never moves, and suddenly she's dancing around weird and doing all kinds of funny gestures, and you can just see things going really wrong. And that's the last video of her alive, because after that, of course, she turned up dead, and how she turned up dead is even more terrifying. Okay, so this unnerving elevator surveillance tape that records a young woman's strange behavior in an elevator has been claimed by many to show proof of ghosts. Why? Because it features the last few moments of Eliza Lamb's life. In the footage, Eliza repeatedly attempts pressing the lift buttons that proved to be ineffective. Excuse me. It refuses to move, and the doors open and close apparently at random. She can also be seen moving in and out of the lift, hiding from someone outside it, and chatting and gesturing with some seemingly invisible entity. Right after the events of the video, Eliza apparently gained access to the rooftop of the hotel, climbed to its water tank, and somehow ended up drowning in it. The rooftop was alarmed, the tank was 8 foot high, and she managed to close the heavy lid after herself despite the fact workers had to cut it open with tools to remove her body. Many paranormal investigators have claimed that this, along with the frightening footage, proves that Eliza's death was caused by supernatural forces. Now, what they don't tell you is that the opening on this tank was actually too small for her to have fit in. And it was a metal water tank, and it was allegedly padlocked. And somehow she managed to get inside of there, close the lid after she fell in, and repadlock it, is my understanding. And so there's just so much creepy in that story and so much wrong with that story, and it's so twisted, and your heart just reaches out for this girl because you're watching the last minutes of her life, and then after that something else takes over and something diabolical happens. Now this hotel she was staying at was allegedly a place where some serial killer had stayed, or some mob people or something. I can't remember the specifics of that part of it, but yeah, the hotel was definitely renowned for its bad vibes. So yeah, Eliza Lamb's pretty sad story. It's one that hits me close to home. It's just like, oh, it just hurts. So the next one is the true story of the Amityville hauntings. And again, these are real quick, so I'm just going to go through them quickly. And they do link to bigger stories, and they're definitely material out there if you want to follow up and read more about these. I just wanted to touch on them because this article is a great way to jump through several different really compelling topics. On the 13th of November, 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr. shot and killed 6 members of his family at 112 Ocean Avenue, a large house situated in a suburban neighborhood of Amityville. He was arrested, found guilty, and jailed, and his house was put on the market, which meant that in December 1975, Kathy and George Lutz and their 3 children moved into the Amityville home. For the next 28 days, the family were terrorized by unseen forces. Kathy had vivid nightmares about the murders and discovered the order in which they occurred and the rooms where they took place. The Lutz children also began sleeping on their stomachs in the same way that the dead bodies of the DeFeo murderers had been found. Things grew steadily worse, with mysterious injuries being inflicted upon the females of the household, strange footprints appearing on the ground, and the discovery of a secret room which did not appear in the blueprints of the house. Painted completely red, the room was dubbed the Red Room, and the family's dog was terrified of it. After deciding that something was wrong with their house, George and Kathy Lutz carried out a blessing on 8th of January 1976. According to reports, George held a silver crucifix while they both recited the Lord's Prayer, and while in the living room, George allegedly heard a chorus of voices asking them, "Will you stop?" They attempted a second house blessing later in that same month and fled the next day, describing the events that occurred as too frightening to ever tell. And I don't know what those are, but I do know the Ronald DeFeo was allegedly being driven mad over quite a period of time. He was being, if indeed he was being possessed or was being tormented by paranormal forces, he would allegedly wake up every morning, 3 a.m., could not sleep well, and was slipping and sliding more and more into his insanity. But he was, what a tragic thing that was. Now this is the tale of Resurrection Mary. I think there's every state in the union probably, and every country probably has a story like this where someone keeps showing up and asking for a ride, and I think that's what this is. Hitchhiking is a very dangerous mode of transportation, both for the driver and the hitchhiker. But we suppose you have nothing to lose if you're already dead. On a stretch of road near Resurrection Cemetery in Justice, Illinois, an attractive blonde-haired, blue-eyed young woman, all dressed in white, is often spotted with her thumb in the air trying to wave down a car for a ride. As she's so very beautiful, plenty of men pull over and let her hop in. Each time she asks to be taken to the cemetery. And each time when they arrive at her final destination, she vanishes into thin air. Now, I've heard several stories like that where some female apparition asks for a ride home and oddly dressed. This one, I think it was in Illinois, but I might be mistaken. This one, it happens near this bridge. And people driving along this road at night, certain times of the year, will encounter this woman in seemingly period dress, and she gets them to stop the car and ask for a ride home. And so she'll hop in the car, and including, apparently this has happened to taxi drivers, she'll hop in the car and then show them where to drive to get to her home, And as soon as they pull up there, she'll be gone. And allegedly, the drivers have gone up to the house and said, I just had someone in my car who claimed this was their home, and now we're here, and I don't know where she went. And the woman in the house, I believe, is her elderly mother. Apparently, the woman died back in the, I don't know if it was the 40s or what, but she had died in a car crash with her boyfriend, and he fled the scene and basically left her there or something, and so she was always wanting to get home, and when shown pictures of the daughter that this elderly woman has, the people driving the cars all recognized that was their passenger. So that's pretty profound and pretty powerful, I guess. Next one is called The Exorcism of Roland Doe. In the late 1940s, priests of the Roman Catholic Church performed a series of exorcisms on a young German boy. Roland Doe, so referred to in a bid to protect his identity, allegedly broke his restraints, pulled a spring out of his mattress, and used it to attack one of the priests during an exorcism which took place at Georgetown State University Hospital. According to reports, strange words appeared all over the boy's body. His bed was alleged to shake during the encounter and spoke in a frightening guttural voice. After breaking the priest's nose, Roland succumbed to the exorcism and went on to lead a rather ordinary life. That's a funny ending. So apparently he was only interesting when he was possessed, because after that he just led a boring and normal life. The Skeleton at Hampton Court Palace. Now this is one I have actually seen the video. If you get a chance, look for it. There's I know I've seen it in the compilation videos that people do of the spookiest things ever caught on CC camera, and this is definitely one of them. And this article shows a capture of it. But according to the HRP website, Skeletor is a ghostly figure that was caught on the palace's closed caption TV cameras in 2003. They explain on 3 consecutive days, palace security staff were called to close one particular fire door near the palace's introductory exhibition. On the first day, CCTV footage showed the doors flying wide open with great force, but there was nothing to reveal why. On the second day, the same thing happened, but this time, a ghostly-looking figure in period dress suddenly appeared on the screen and closed the doors. They had the doors opened again on the third day, but there was no further sign of the ghostly doorkeeper. And as I said, I have seen the video that's allegedly captured from those cameras, and I mean it's CCTV, so obviously it's not HD quality or anything, but it could be or could very well be real. Those old buildings definitely have their old ghosts, and apparently he's just making sure the doors are shut. The Black-Eyed Ghost of Cannock Chase. Cannock Chase, I assume that's how you say it, Cannock. Cannock Chase in Staffordshire is reportedly haunted by the ghosts of 3 children who were murdered by Raymond Leslie Morris in the 1960s. People have reported seeing the children running through the woodland at night. Some have reported that the children sometimes giggle, while others claim they've heard them begging for help. 2 things always remain the same, however. The children are clothed in white, and they have frightening, staring black eyes. Now, apparently there's also footage of this. I'm going to see if I can copy the video URL and post it in the chat room so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Let me see if it works. I just posted it in there. If you want to check it out yourself, come to truthfrequencyradio.com and join the chat room. It is posted in there. And those of you in chat, check it out and see if that worked. That's your homework. Verify my link, please. And I don't think these are the traditional black-eyed kids that people encounter. But anyway, it's Ghostbuster Tom Buckmaster, who captured the footage, says, "It looks like a child dressed in white, and you can see its leg moving as it walks. I didn't even know I had captured the ghost until I went over the footage and thought, what the hell was that?" Let me see now. Did it work? It's there. Okay. Thanks, Jane. Appreciate that. So this is called the Demon Murder Trial, and I didn't have a chance to pre-read this one, so we'll both learn about it together. It doesn't sound like anything I'm familiar with. So, in 1981, Arnie Cheyenne Johnson murdered his landlord, Alan Bono, in Connecticut. But was Johnson really to blame for his actions, or had he been possessed? In the first ever case to cite demonic possession as a defense for murder, Johnson's lawyers argued that his actions stemmed from a pattern of erratic behavior which began when Johnson was just a child. Or Johnson. Did I say Johnston? I'm sorry if it is. It's Johnson. Johnson's family had even consulted with demonologist Ed and Lorraine Warren, saying that their child had been taunted and harassed by spirits and demons for most of his life. Ultimately, the judge ruled that demonic possession was not a valid defense against first-degree murder. However, despite being found guilty, Johnson only served 5 years of his 10 to 20-year sentence. So, it may not be a valid defense, but it's a weak video. Sorry, Tom Jones in the chat says that is so weak. So I don't know. I didn't have a chance to look at it. Sorry if it's a lame video, but I thought I would include that for you. I guess I could post. Somebody did post the Eliza Lamb video in the chat room as well. I thought, maybe not. I thought somebody had found that and posted it. Let me look through the chat as well to see if that's in there. Oh yeah. Tom in our chat room had posted a video of the video I was referring to of Eliza Lamb. So that's in there as well to check that link out. Okay, yep. I'm getting. Yep, thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. Okay. So those videos are up there. Chloe and the Myrtles Plantation. Now, the Myrtles Plantation is pretty well known, and I know a lot of paranormal shows have been through there and done investigations, and I think that's where Ghost Adventures had some weird lights turning on and off in a allegedly secured one of the houses that the slaves had been housed in back in the day, but I'm not positive, but I believe that's Myrtle's Plantation. According to legend, Chloe was this is a different one, isn't it? Chloe was a slave in the early 19th century, but she was fiercely independent and keen to gain her freedom. As a result, she started listening at doors and windows in a bid to garner the information she needed to break free. But one day she was found at the door, and the foreman cut off her ear. Jesus. Ugh. In revenge, she baked a poisonous cake for the plantation owner, Judge Clark Woodruff, but his wife and 2 young daughters ate it instead. Chloe was hanged from a tree on the plantation, but her soul is still not at rest. A famous photo taken of the plantation in 1992, and in it, Chloe can be seen listening at the door. Staff say that she appears quite frequently between 2 trees outside the home, and she is credited with many mysterious goings-on inside, from misplaced earrings to moving furniture. Well, in that case, she must be visiting my house too, because I'm missing stuff as well. I wish I could blame everything that I got going on with ghosts. Oh, it's not me, it's my ghost. Real life ghost. Oh, the Disneyland ghost. Now, this is a pretty famous one, and I'm going to post this one in the chat as well. This one I have seen, and it's clearly of Disneyland. It's not some fabrication, and I believe this one's probably legit. But it's of a ghost that is tracked over a couple different cameras walking from the haunted mansion out down to the sidewalk and eventually out over the water. And it's a really good video, but I'll read the story. It's the happiest place on earth, apparently, so it makes sense the ghost would want to stick around and beat the queues at Disneyland. I guess I'll talk to you about it after the break. Stick right around at the Paranormal Portal. We'll be right back after this. And welcome back. Thank you all for being here again. It's been a fun show tonight. Thank you for all the feedback and all the messages and stuff. I appreciate it. I'm really thrilled you're here, and I'm thrilled to be here talking to you. I'm really glad you're happy to put up with me. So anyway, back to the Disneyland ghost. All right. Now, some people in the chat, and they may be right. It's strong. There is a possibility. Some people in the chat room have said that could be a passing car reflecting a column of light, and it's possible. But it does cover more than one camera angle, and it is in the Disney park itself. I believe this is Disney World. It could be Disneyland, but I guess it says ghost hangs around Disneyland, so it's apparently Disneyland. But I assume it's in the park where there shouldn't probably be cars running around. But anyway, I'm not an expert, and if it's not legit, so be it. But at least it's fun to look at. So it's the happiest place on earth, apparently. So it makes sense that ghosts would want to stick around and beat the queues at Disneyland when they reach the afterlife. Yeah, I think that'd be a fun place to haunt. If you get to choose, that might be where I would choose to go. This creepy footage shows a spooky figure wandering through the park late at night, looking oddly translucent on the CCTV cameras. And yes, before you ask, several people have died in the popular amusement park, and nearly all in gruesome circumstances. I didn't know that. Maybe it's not quite as happy as I thought. That's terrible. Sorry to hear that. The gruesome true life story behind The Entity. The classic horror film The Entity is absolutely chilling. In the 1982 flick, a young mother is, raped and tortured by unseen otherworldly beings, and it's even more terrifying when you know it is based on a true story. Yep, we're serious. In 1974, a woman named Doris Blyther claimed she was assaulted by invisible entities. Despite the fact that many people slammed the young woman as a liar, two paranormal investigators, Barry Taff and Carrie Gaynor, decided to investigate, and what they found was very disturbing. Check it out. And there is a video attached. From floating balls of light floating, which is redundant, but two floatings, I guess, makes it more compelling. About two whispering voices, there's no way we would ever set foot in that house. The real life haunting in Connecticut. So yeah, it's based on a true story too, apparently. Yes, we've all seen the film, but once again, the horror movie was based on real life events. Gulp. In 1980, the family of Carmen Snedeker reported some very strange incidents in their Connecticut home in the 1980s. It soon transpired that their home had formerly been used as a funeral parlor, and that the spirits were deeply unhappy that the living had moved in. Paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren were called in to examine the home, which they professed was infested with demons. Speaking about horror movie film that came later, Lorraine said the actual case was much, much scarier than any movie could ever be. And if you ever get a chance, do check out some old videos that are on YouTube, and I've run into a few of them, but Ed and Lorraine Warren are no joke. They've been around forever, and they are. Ed has since passed away, but Lorraine is still around, or I believe Ed has passed away. He might just be much more elderly and unable to be on camera, but Lorraine has been on several paranormal shows, and I think she really knows her stuff, and she's certainly built quite an incredible list of occurrences that her and her husband, her late husband perhaps, had been a part of. And they do have some actual footage online of cases that they worked on. So please, if you get a chance, check it out. It's there's one where this family is haunted by some unseen poltergeist, and it keeps sliding around the chair that the little girl is sitting on trying to study, and it keeps tipping it back, and the mom has to stand behind it to keep straightening out the chair. I mean, it allegedly happened so much that it just, the mom knew she had to stand behind the daughter in order to keep her daughter from tipping over in a chair, because it was just going on that much. And clearly there's some kind of entity needing acknowledgement there, because it was definitely vying for attention. So, the Enfield poltergeist. Now the Enfield poltergeist is come under scrutiny as well. A lot of people claim that the children were faking and stuff, but I don't believe so. I think there's definitely something to it. So, in August 1977, single mom Peggy Hodgson called police to her council home in Enfield. When they arrived, she explained that 2 of her 4 children had told her that furniture was moving all by itself. More terrifying, they heard knocking sounds coming from inside the walls. A skeptical police officer looked around the house, and he admitted that he saw a chair slide on the floor. The strange events continued to happen, with demonic voices, loud noises, thrown toys, overturned chairs, and levitating children reported by many paranormal investigators. American paranormal investigator Ed Warren later said he'd observed one of the children, Janet, as she lay sound asleep, meditating or levitating in midair. He concluded that the children were the subject of a demonic possession. You know, and there's Ed and Lorraine Warren again. They're very good at what they did. The Bell Witch. Ever wonder where the Blair Witch Project producers came up with the idea for their film? Look this way. In the 1800s, the Bell family moved into a house in a small town in Tennessee, and after just a few weeks, they began experiencing some very spooky activity. It began with knocking and scratching on the walls of their house, but slowly the activity began to grow more violent. The youngest Bell daughter, Betsy, was constantly slapped and pinched out of nowhere. Strange bruises would appear, and other family members felt themselves being kicked or their hair being pulled. Eventually, John Bell fell into a sickness and eventually died next to a black bottle that contained some type of poison. Could the Bell Witch have really been the spirit of a slave that Bell had killed, as paranormal investigators believe? And if so, why did the spirit show so much hatred towards Betsy Bell? We guess it will remain a mystery. Oh, the Mothman. So, the Mothman is a subject that I'm not sure what to think about. I mean, it's, again, I don't know that it's not true. I don't know that it's true. It's just one of those compelling cryptid or spiritual entities kind of things that's out there, and people claim to have had experiences with it. They claim it foretells bad events. They claim that it speaks to them in their mind or can take over people or, you know, whatever. I don't know. I watched that show, Mountain Monsters, and I don't know. I think I've talked about that show before on this show. I've talked about Mountain Monsters before, and when that show was first coming out, I was filled with such hope because I thought, you know, if there's anybody that can probably track some, you know, backwoods kind of cryptids or, you know, creatures that are allegedly roaming the woods, a bunch of hillbillies ought to be able to do it. These are, you know, mountain people. They live in the mountains. They, you know, as far as hunters go, they're, you know, about as good as it gets because they know their area. You know, probably, you know, could be generations of moonshiners, could be, you know, whatever, but they know their woods. And when it came out, I really tried to give it the benefit of the doubt, but they did a Mothman episode, and the one guy is, and God bless them all for trying. I don't know what happened with the show, whether they got overtaken by Hollywood producers or, you know, it was never legitimate, whatever the case was. The really big guy, there's, you know, and everybody on the show is at least 3 bills, so they're, you know, they could definitely use a treadmill. And I'm not poking fun of heavy people. I'm not like a Speedo model myself, but yeah, you know, I don't know. It's just the typical stereotype of the mountain people, but the one heavy one looked back behind them during the Mothman episode and saw two red lights behind them, which are allegedly they're allegedly the eyes of the Mothman. And then he turns around and is like, I don't feel so. And then he just falls and he does just this face plant on the ground, and it's not nice to laugh when somebody gets hurt, and I feel bad for it, but I couldn't help but start howling. It's just the way he fell, just was like it was too funny. So forgive me. I'll probably have to atone for that laughter, but it just kills me. So anyway, forgive me. Back on the subject. Back on the topic. Excuse me. So this story is referencing the Mothman, and they also reference the Mothman Prophecies movie, and I have not seen this. It was recommended to me by a friend, and I just haven't had a chance to check it out, but I hope to someday, so maybe I understand this whole phenomenon a little better other than the little clippings and videos that I've been able to find and the mockery of it that they did on Mountain Monsters. So The Mothman prophecies are based on the sightings of an enormous moth-like creature said to be seen in Point Pleasant, West Virginia between 1966 and 1967. But what did the creature want? Well, many townsfolk have reported that they saw the creature hovering over the town's iconic Silver Bridge. These apparitions continued, becoming more and more frequent until the bridge unexpectedly collapsed during rush hour traffic. 46 people were killed. The Mothman was never seen again after the incident, but did the creature cause that terrible tragedy, or was it simply an omen of things to come? Now, that's not an accurate statement because, of course, many people even still today claim to have encountered the Mothman. But I guess for the sake of this article, they just went with the old visuals and let it die. But people around that area still claim to see or have seen the apparitions of the Mothman. The Jamaica Inn, rumored to be one of the most haunted places in the UK, the Jamaica Inn has a dark and bloody history. According to legend, a stranger stood at the bar enjoying a tankard of ale one night. That sounds like a lot of ale. A tankard. Sorry, I'm just a little punchy tonight, I guess. Forgive me. He was called outside and quickly went out to see what had happened, leaving the half-finished ale. That was the last time he was seen alive. The next morning, his corpse was found on the bleak moor, but the manner of his death and the identity of his assailant still remain a mystery. Nowadays, people have reported hearing footsteps trampling along the passage to the bar, and in the 1900s, a silent stranger was often spotted sitting on the wall outside of the inn. No matter how much people tried to engage him in conversation, the stranger refused to make eye contact or even speak, and would often vanish without a trace. Could it be the dead man's spirit returned? And if so, is he simply back to finish his drink? And there's a link as well if you wanted to follow up with the rest of that article. So that was a little snapshots of a lot of stories, and I usually enjoy reading much more robust stories to you guys because I think the longer stories tend to paint a more compelling picture of the events. But those short ones allowed us to cover a lot of ground in a hurry. So, and this is the last show before Halloween, so I wanted to not miss any of them. So, next we will look into, do ghosts really exist? Even though ghost sightings, New York's Morris Jumel mansion would be pretty spooky. The oldest residence in New York City was once the abode of the scandalous Eliza Jumel, a society lady and magnet for scandalous gossip. Jumel, whose second husband was Alexander Hamilton's killer, Aaron Burr, was probably thought to have murdered her first husband, was popularly thought to have murdered her first husband, Stephen. Her emotional decline towards the end of her life, when Jumel became a shut-in, was said to have been the inspiration for the Great Expectations, Miss Havisham. But Jumel has an even greater legacy than inspiring one of the creepier cautionary tale characters in a modern Western literary canon. She's also reputed to haunt the mansion, which was the site of the largest scale ghost sighting in history. In 1964, Jumel supposedly materialized before a school group visiting the mansion and asked them to please kindly shut up. Though the home's curators claim the sighting was all a hoax, many visitors report eerie feelings to this day upon visiting the home, called Resurrection Mary. So this is another one of those tales that I dug up about the hitchhiker. It says, location is Chicago. There was probably a version of this story in the town where you grew up. Your sister's boyfriend's best friend told you that if you drove down a certain stretch of road at a certain time of the year, you might see a woman who would ask for a ride and then vanish when you neared the local cemetery. This story is called the Vanishing Hitchhiker myth by folklorists, has been around in some variation for ages, but the most famous case in the modern era is Resurrection Mary, usually thought to be the spirit of one or two young women who died in area car accidents in the 1930s. Mary haunts Archer Avenue and the grounds of the Resurrection Cemetery in the town of Justice, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. She's been cited fairly regularly since 1939 by motorists who report nearly hitting a young woman in a white dress who's crossing the street in front of the cemetery, by motorists who report giving her a ride, and the occasional cab driver who complains about skipping out on a fare, we assume, and one 1976 eyewitness who saw her clutching the gates of the cemetery, and later found burn marks on the metal, where her hands had been. But if you're ghost hunting injustice, watch out for pranksters. More than one fake Mary has been arrested by local police for trying to scare passing drivers. Philadelphia's East State Penitentiary looks like a Gothic fortress, but it was really a working prison, one that played home to a number of infamous residents, including Al Capone, from 1829 until 1971. The massive spooky edifice is now a historical site where visitors can listen to an audio guide recorded by Steve Buscemi and learn about the American prison reform and criminal law history, and the prison's own history of thoroughly inhumane punishments for prisoners, like banishing them to an actual literal hole. But East State Penitentiary is far more than just a place for history to come to life. It's also a place where a number of its deceased residents are reputed to come to life as well. Featured on MTV's Fear and the Travel Channel's Ghost Adventures, Eastern State is widely reputed to be haunted and attracts dozens of paranormal groups each year who hunt for the spot's storied whispering voices and ghostly faces. Rumors claim echoing laughter in the prison's cell block 12 and apparitions in cell block 4. The most famous incidents of haunting involves locksmith Gary Johnson, who worked at the prison after it became a museum. Johnson was servicing locks at the site in the 90s and says he spotted a dark shadow watching him, which then vanished. This one's called Ariana Grande Walked Up to the Gates of Hell. This is not I think it's not the same as the teenage pop star or whatever. This is in Stoll, Kansas. Devoted fans of urban legends or devoted supernatural fans know all about Stull, S-T-U-L-L. The small Kansas town is home to a graveyard reputed to house the doorway to hell. On certain nights of the year, a set of steps supposedly appear that will lead anyone who walks down them to eternal damnation, and Satan himself puts in appearances at the spot every year to visit his bride's grave. But even if you couldn't find the steps, the graveyard is still offering plenty of spooky sights for the thrill seekers who thronged to it for decades, like the small roofless church inside the cemetery, that supposedly repelled rain and was reputed to be the site of occult goings-ons. The legend is considered so powerful that pervasive internet rumor claims that the Pope won't fly over the area. It's also considered such a nuisance by locals that when a property owner demolished the graveyard's historically important small church in 2002, most neighbors seemed relieved. So where does the Ariana Grande come into all this? Well, on a recent tour stop in Kansas, the surprisingly spooky Grande and her crew ventured out to Stull. Then she spilled what happened next to Complex magazine. Oh, it is the tour. It is the teenage girl. I felt this sick, overwhelming feeling of negativity over the whole car, and we smelled sulfur, which is a sign of a demon. And there was a fly in the car randomly, which is another sign of a demon. I was like, this is scary, let's leave. I rolled down the window before we left and said, we apologize, we didn't mean to disrupt your peace. Then I took a picture, and there are 3 super distinct faces in the pictures. They're faces of textbook demons. The next day I tried to send the picture to my manager, and it said this file can't be sent. It's 666 megabytes. I'm not kidding. Grande claimed to then have been menaced by negative spirits, including a floating black mass, though not getting that picture for Instagram was presumably the most horrifying aspect of the whole ordeal. So I guess it was the little pop star or whatever. They can be haunted too, apparently. Ooh, what is that a picture of? Just taking a look at the chat here to see what's going on, as I've had my head in an article for quite a while now. Again, the phone lines are open if you want to call in and share any tales you might have. 866-37-TRUTH, TRUTH, 866-378-7884. So please feel free to call in. Be brave. Come on. It's Halloween. It's time for sharing spooky tales. New Jersey. Where else? In addition to being the diner capital, dinner or diner, I don't know. Diner, I think. Capital of the world and birthplace of both Frank Sinatra and filmmaker Kevin Smith, New Jersey is also a hotbed of alleged supernatural activity. And no spot is hotter than Clinton Road, a desolate stretch of land famous for its density of evil druids, hybrid animals, and boy ghosts. Located near the Dead Man's Curve area of the road, there is a bridge over a lake, the reputed home of the ghost boy of Clinton Road. In more innocuous versions of the tale, the ghost boy will take change left for him on the road's median and drop it into the lake below, or throw back the coins that have been dropped into the lake. But in a few more sinister variations of the story, the boy who either drowned in the lake or was run over on the stretch of road while trying to pick up a coin he saw on the road is looking for some permanent company and will drag down those who throw coins into the lake. Next story is from Boston. Built as a luxury hotel in 1891, Boston's Charles Gate Hotel played host to both a gory suicide and the death of its own architect in its first decades of its existence. Later transformed into an apartment complex, then a Boston University dorm, then an Emerson College dorm, before turning into the condominium complex that stands on the site to this day, the Charles Gate has gained reputation as one of Boston's most haunted places. But don't take my word for it, or the word of dozens of BU and Emerson alumni who have reported eerie experiences in the building. Ask actress Gina Gershon. As she notes in the above clip from the Celebrity Ghost Stories, when Gershon was a student at Emerson in the early 80s, she experienced cold spots, strange noises, and eventually spotted the apparition of a little blonde girl caressing the cheek of a male friend. Gershon believed the girl to be the spirit who had died with her family in a fire in the building, and thought that she was waiting around in hopes that her parents would come and come get her. Again, I'm not a big fan of alleged child ghost stories. I don't believe that they are what they claim to be. So this is 5 stories. My computer's getting a little laggy, so just excuse me for a second. It's just taking a little bit more horsepower. So this is kind of a cool story. I read through this one and thought it was kind of neat. When my daughter was 2, I found her twirling paper towel tubes tied with twine in the air. I asked her what she was doing. She said she was practicing her nunchucks. I was very confused, as she'd have no way of knowing what they were. I asked her what she meant, and she said that Adam had told her how to make them and showed her each night how to use them. She went on to say that Adam told her to practice because she may need to know how to defend herself someday. I almost freaked out, but asked her what Adam looked like. She said he was tall, blonde, and had blue eyes. She said, "Mommy, you know how he looks. You know him. He died of a headache." I had to leave the room. You see, four months before she was born, my tall, blonde, blue-eyed martial arts pro friend had died of a brain aneurysm at the age of 27. She has not spoken of him since that day, and so I'm not sure if I scared her with my reaction or if she had completed her lessons. The next one's called the school bus. So we're driving from Tijuana to Sonora. Late at night, I fall asleep and wake up hearing my mom say, "Is that real? How can they drive that way?" And my dad just replying, "I don't know. Why would he be driving like this at this hour?" I opened my eyes a little bit and saw a very creepy school bus in driving in front of us at the middle of the desert with all the windows broken and pieces of plastic all around. My parents decided to pass the bus because he was going slower than we were. It was so dark we couldn't see who was driving. He hit the accelerator and left the creepy bus behind. We waited at a rest stop about 45 minutes for the bus to pass. The road had no turns, so you just had to pass this gas station. And it never did. Okay, we'll be right back after this short break, and we'll continue on our journey. The Paranormal Portal.
Can't let go, I'm breaking apart, controlling me, controlling me.
Welcome back again. This is the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for sticking with us. We've entered the last half hour of our show. Again, if you still time to call in if you want. Their call line is open, 866-37-TRUTH, 866-378-7884. Or come into the chat room, truthfrequencyradio.com. Say hello, meet everybody. Bunch of great people in there. Always always enjoy the conversations, and sometimes it's hard to keep doing my job because I can just look at some of the things they post and it busts me up laughing. But oftentimes it's a great augmenting of the show because the input in the chat room is really phenomenal and it's really helped me. And again, I know I said it before, but thank you to all of you in the chat room and for participating and being a part of the show. It's really means the world to me, and I appreciate all the kind words. Thank you guys so much. It's a blast to do the radio show anyway, but then to have that instant feedback and instant communications and information has been phenomenal. So really appreciate you all. And so if you get a chance, stop by, meet everybody in there. So continuing, and it's not for little kids. Continuing on our tales for the night. Sorry, I'm getting like bursts of static in my ear, so I'm not sure if it's my connection or if you guys are hearing that. Do you guys hear static as it's coming through? I'm not sure. Anybody in chat, you guys hearing any static bursts, or is it just me? I'm waiting for just a little feedback here. Now it's stopped, so I assume it's probably okay, but could just be on my computer itself. But I was getting static bursts in my ear, so if that is going through the radio, I really apologize. It's definitely not the quality I'm going for here on the Paranormal Portal. I want it to be a top quality, top level show. So continuing on to our haunting tales of ghosts and other happenings in the spirit of the Halloween season, let's read a story called Ouija Board, Ouija Board. That's a really creepy picture they got on that story, though. Jeez. Hey. We did about 3 Ouija board sessions in our dorm room freshman year. After that, we started hearing carousel music, growling, laughing, all when we were in our dorm room alone. My roommate Jackie also heard a little girl singing along to a song with her when she was driving. Also, one night she felt a child grab her hand. That's no child. Just saying. Throughout all of this, I kept seeing apparitions. A man in uniform standing next to my closet and a girl with long black hair standing at the foot of my bed. We were right next to Kennesaw Mountain, the site of a major battle, so I figured the man in uniform was a soldier who had perished in battle. As for the girl, I have no idea. It's no girl. Just saying. Someday it's my mission. It's my mission on Paranormal Portal to drive that fact home. There is no children spirits wandering around. They've all been picked up. What you have is something else. This one's called The Dog, and I have to share a personal tale. I had this wonderful, wonderful dog. Her name was Xena, and I didn't name her. I did love the TV show Xena, the Warrior Princess, so it was fine with me. But her name was Xena. She was a German Shepherd, and She was amazing. When I got her, she was already a year old when I got her, and I got her for nothing. And she was a purebred. She had papers and all that, and that was fantastic and all. But it wasn't why I got her. I had grown up with German Shepherds and loved the breed, and so I got this dog and picked her up on the farm that she was born on, and was told by the people I got her from that they tried to give her another home, but that didn't work out, and I never really got many details on what that meant. But she she had never been on a leash. She had never had a collar. She was not housebroken. She was just a mess. And on the way home from getting her, which was a couple-hour drive from my house, I stopped at a pet store with my brother who was helping me, and we got a leash and collar and some dog stuff because I didn't have anything at home, some food bowls, some food, etc., etc. And had her in the car, and I was trying to get her out of the car, and I put the collar on her, and then I attached the leash to it, and she stepped out of the car really nervous. She was a very timid dog and wasn't sure why, but as soon as I put any pull on that leash, she hit the ground. I was like, my God, what's going on? And she would just whine and whimper, and she was so afraid. And brought her in the house, and she wouldn't let me touch her for 3 days. It was she would just skid around me and scoot around me, and finally over time she would nudge a little closer and a little closer, and I finally was able to pet her. And then once she became comfortable, she went into a whole brand new puppy phase as a 1-year-old German Shepherd. And let me tell you, a full-grown German Shepherd going into puppy phase is an absolute disaster. But I bared with her, and I did get her trained on the leash and potty trained and all that stuff, and it was great. And she ended up becoming like a nanny. She would, if any of my children, I have a few, if any of them were ever crying, she would hear it obviously before I would, and she would make sure that I would go take care of what was wrong. She would like nudge me until I went after to find out what was wrong. And if I ever played roughhousing with my kids, she would get so nervous, and she would jump in between us and look at me and basically talk to me. She would rah, 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 until I stopped. So she was great. And the point of the story, which doesn't really fit with our theme, but is that she became old. She lived for 14 years and did suffer the hip dysplasia and died. And it was one of the most heartbreaking things ever, because she was such an angel. She was just such a sweet soul. And I dream about her still. And in my dreams, she comes and sees me. And it's real. It's as far as I know, it's real. It's like she's really there. And I know at the end of the dream that she has to leave. And it's in my heart starts breaking all over again. And I'm thinking, don't go, and she starts to walk away, but she's looking back, and I yell, and I actually ended up yelling in real life because I was trying to get her to come back. So that's I believe that she's really visiting me, that she really stops in to let me know she's okay and she's waiting. So that's my quick little blurb about that. But since we were talking about dogs, I don't know what brought that to my head, but anyway, sorry, I don't mean to get too autobiographical. But if you have a pet, you know that they just become such a part of your heart and soul, and when they pass, it just leaves such a hole. But there's an old saying that I like to refer to when I'm thinking about things like that, and it's like, the star that shines twice as bright burns half as long. And so I think that's her story. So anyway, happens to be about a German Shepherd as well, or German Shepherd mix. So about 5 years ago, my family was caring for my brother's dog, a German Shepherd Husky Chow Chow mix, an incredibly gentle dog who never barked. One day, me and my sister came home from school, and like every other day, he greeted us through the upstairs rails and came about halfway down the stairs, where he laid down and watched us. Just as we put our backpacks down, we heard it. The little spot upstairs right before the steps that let you know you weren't alone creaked, and right after the creaking, the shuffling followed, like something running away after getting caught. Me and my sister just stood there. I wanted to scream and run out of the house, but we stood there frozen, not knowing what to do. Then my dog immediately stood up and bared his teeth. He was facing towards the stairs, and all the hair on his back started to rise. He chased whatever it was, barking and growling the whole time, Sounded like he was going to freaking kill something. Then out of nowhere, he stopped and came downstairs and stayed by our sides until our dad came home an hour later. Of course, our dad didn't believe us. Stuff like that never happened to him, so it didn't exist. Yeah, another open mind, I see. That is one of the creepiest things that ever happened to us, and it never happened again after that day. So I believe that those animals can be protectors. Now, I know a lot of times animals end up on the short end of the stick, depending on what presence is there, because they often attack animals first because they tend to warn us when something's around. But they are an incredible part of the family. The next one is called the Black Mama. Sounds creepy. Thank you. I appreciate that. Someone just messaged me. They appreciate my autobiographical stories, so I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I don't intend to make the show about me, but sometimes when it fits, I just gotta include those little pieces. So this is called the Black Mama. When my mom was about 3, Grandma began reading The Exorcist when all of a sudden she heard humming from my mom's room. When she went in, my mom was waving her arms at the end of her bed. When my grandma asked what she was doing, she said, "Dancing with her." My grandma asked, "Dancing with who?" "With the Black Mama." "How is she black, hon? Like her skin?" "No, Mama, like her heart." My grandmother burned the book. My grandmother burned the book. What's creepier is that my cousin and sister have both claimed to see the black girl. Both of them waved their arms. So that's those stories. Next, it's back to a little bit, and this a little more creepy stuff, but that's all right. It's Halloween. A group of young girls was having a slumber party one night. This is called the Graveyard Wager. No, that's a terrible story. I'll read it to you anyway because it's one of those creepy stories, but I don't think this is really true, so I'll read it to you, and then I'll get on to the next one. A group of young girls was having a slumber party one night and began to exchange ghost stories. One girl claimed that the old man who had been buried earlier that week in the graveyard down the street had been buried alive. She claimed that if you tried, you could hear him still scratching at the lid of his coffin. The other girls called her bluff and told her that she wouldn't do it. They said she was too afraid to go down there to the graveyard that very night. They continued to challenge her, and eventually she gave into the peer pressure and accepted the challenge. Since she was going to go alone, she needed to prove to the others that she actually followed through with the task. She was supposed to take a stake with her and drive it into the ground so the next day the girls would know that she had been to the grave. She headed off to the gravesite, stake in hand, and never returned. The other girls assumed she had chickened out, had just gone home instead. The next morning, as they passed the graveyard, they saw her there, at the old man's grave. She had accidentally staked her nightshirt into the ground, and when she tried to run from the grave, she couldn't. She died of fright, right on the grave. That's not really paranormal, that's just creepy. So, we're going to move on. 12 terrifying ghost stories you shouldn't read alone. Well, it's a good thing I'm not alone. You guys are with me. So, this one's called The Cell Phone. A couple of months ago, my friend's cousin, a single mother, bought a new cell phone. I guess just a new cell phone. After a long day at work, she came home, placed her phone on the counter, and went to watch TV. Her son came to her and asked if he could play with her new phone. She told him not to call anyone or mess with the text messages, and he agreed. At around 11:20, she was drowsy, so she decided to tuck her son in and go to bed. She walked into his room and saw that he wasn't there. She then ran over to her room and found him sleeping on her bed with the phone in his hand. Relieved, she picked her phone back up from his hand to inspect it. Browsing through, she noticed only minor changes such as a new background, banner, etc. But then she opened up her saved pictures. She began deleting the pictures he had taken until only one new picture remained. When she first saw it, she was in disbelief. It was her son sleeping on her bed, but the picture was taken by someone else above him, and it showed the left half of an elderly woman's face. Wow. So allegedly, ghosts can use cell phones, so please lock your phone when you're not using it. This is called Ghost Bro. My house was built in 1904. It is a single-family home, wood frame, sitting on a concrete block foundation. I've been living here for about 12 years. Of all the weird things that my siblings and me have seen or heard in this house, this one event is my favorite. This happened to my brother about 10 years ago. My brother and his best friends had started a garage band playing mostly Spanish rock, alternative music, but in Spanish. His friends could only get together on Sunday afternoons. They would practice in the early evening, and they would usually call it quits by 8 p.m. This was the time I usually showed up and went to bed because I worked the graveyard shift. This happened in the late fall, so the days were getting shorter, and just finished a long session when the discussion to head to someone else's house came about. My brother handed his car keys to my buddy so they could load up the equipment. Everyone had filed out of the basement, but the tricky part was that they needed to walk all the way to the back of the basement, up the back stairs, through the kitchen doorway, down the hall, into the living room, and out into the front porch. Everyone was outside, sitting on my brother's truck waiting for him. My brother was walking up the back stairs when he remembered that he had left his pancakes in a to-go container sitting on a speaker in the basement. Can't leave without pancakes. That's a moral imperative, I think. He made the decision to go back. Now, the basement is not clean. With full sight lines, there had been partitions made, and the boiler and the main heating unit are right smack in the middle. So after my brother walks back, he is about to retrieve his food container when out of the corner of his eye he sees it. It is a shadowy figure right at his peripheral vision. This feeling of dread and uneasiness wash over my brother. We had been taught that if you are in the presence of a spirit or ghost and you felt a bad vibe, to say a quick prayer or to cuss at it. My brother chose the latter, and he just basically told it, "Hey, F you. I don't have time for this." My brother started to walk to the back of the basement and briskly up the stairs, closing the door and turning off the lights as he was walking out. The last light switch is on the opposite side of the front door. Luckily, the door was open and the light from the street lamp was flooding the living room with its amber light. My brother said he felt something in his back, but at no point did he turn around. As he flicked the last switch, the living room went dark, as did the rest of the house. As he stepped out, he pulled on the door, closing it behind him. Still holding his food container in one hand, he jogged down the few porch steps. He walked towards the front gate. Our house resides far from the main street, essentially having a large front yard but no rear garage. As he closed the gap between himself and his friend-laden truck, he kind of smiled and thought things over in his head, mad at himself for spooking out when there was no reason. He climbed into the driver's side of the truck, putting on his seatbelt and getting ready to pull out of the parking spot directly in front of a house, when one of his friends asked, "Hey, wait, what about your brother? Isn't he coming with us?" My brother answered, "What do you mean? He went to work early tonight. He is already gone. Do you see his car anywhere?" The next question they asked is, "So, who was walking behind you when you were leaving the house?" Ooh. That's a little creepy. No, on the Paranormal Portal Radio Facebook page, I posted in one of those collections of ghost videos. There's a picture of or a video rather of a ghost that appears to be following somebody into a cab, and you can see that was submitted by one of our chat members, Shane, a long time ago, and I finally started the Facebook page and made sure to put up that video, or at least a video that contained that same video that he had sent me. But yeah, it's creepy to think that something could be following you. But that's one of the things with paranormal investigations and anything like that. And I'm not saying that's what this guy was doing. You can certainly pick up attachments anywhere, but whenever you are investigating or looking into the paranormal or whatever, it's a good idea to cleanse yourself afterwards. And you can do that through any measure you believe has power to you, whether that's a devout prayer, whether it's something such as smudging with sage, or some people cleanse and using salt water or holy water or essential oils, whatever the case. But it's always good to clear yourself after you're done, because you don't want something following you home. That's not the good way to be. Because once they're in your home, then they don't want to leave, and then you got to deal with that. So let's see. Continuing on. It's called The Rocking Horse. One night when I was maybe 10 to 12, I had trouble falling asleep. My bedroom is the entire top floor of our house, with my bed and such being on the left side and storage closets and a play area being on the right. I was lying in bed when I heard a noise from the other side of the room and see a rocking horse begin to rock. It was sitting just outside one of the storage closet doors. It proceeded to rock its way halfway across the room and stopped dead under the ceiling light. Stop dead, really? That was a great choice of words. At this point, I was freaking out and just buried my head under the blankets and never peeked out again until morning. It was all confirmed to not be a dream, as the rocking horse was still in the middle of my room when I woke up. Furthermore, I got a stern reprimand from my parents for being out of bed playing with my toys well past my bedtime. Their bedroom is directly below the storage closet playing area, and had heard the creaking of the rocking horse shuffling across the room. Yeah, that's not even fair. The ghost gets people in trouble. This one's called The Following. My older sister has a ghost that's followed her around for years. That was actually, as a side note, that was the interview that I had lined up for tonight was someone I've met and gotten to know, and they have had paranormal experiences their whole life, as far as hauntings and ghost presences and stuff. And so it'll be great when that person can make it on the show. Unfortunately, they had to cancel last minute tonight, so that's why you got me reading stories. But I'm really looking forward to having him on the show and relating his experience. He's also a deputy sheriff, so he's a trained observer. He's a person that has credibility, and so look forward to that experience whenever that can happen. But anyway, so the older sister has a ghost that's followed her around for years. I lived with her once for about 3 months, and so much weird stuff happened in that time. All my sister would say to me when I mentioned it was that her ghost didn't like me being there. That's rude. Things like going to bed with everything locked up and switched off, and waking up in the morning with the back door open, lights on, and the kettle switched on. One night my sister and I were getting ready to go out, and I'd asked to borrow her liquid foundation. I used it and put it back where she kept her makeup. 10 minutes later, she's asking me for it, and it was nowhere to be seen. She accused me of taking it and made me buy her a new one, and refused to listen to my side of the story about makeup. About a year or so later, when she was packing to move to a new house, she found the makeup in a shoebox with some old letters. The shoebox was zipped up in a zipped up suitcase that was underneath her bed. Probably the most scared I ever felt was one afternoon when I was the only one in the house, which never happened as 4 other people lived there. I'd arrived home from work and headed straight to the bathroom. All the doors and windows, etc., were closed. I was standing in the bathroom and started squeezing a pimple on my chin when a female voice in the hall said, "Stop picking your zits." It was loud. It was loud enough and sounded real enough at the time. I thought it was my sister, so I laughed and told her to F off and asked what she was doing for dinner. No answer. I stuck my head out into the hallway and no one was there. I searched the house top to bottom and no one was home. I sat out on the front porch until someone else got home because I didn't want to be in there alone. And this one is called, we just got a few minutes left, so this one's called Annie96 is Typing. There's much more of an interactive experience than anything else on the list. As you read through this WhatsApp conversation, you have to manually click enter to make each new message appear. It's as close to a text-based horror movie you'll ever find. The story I do not often tell. I promise sincerely that this has scarred me for life. And although I have looked into psychological explanations for what I heard and natural explanations for what occurred, they remain unsatisfactory. When I was a child, I was scared of the dark. I swore to my mother I heard voices in it. They were not evil, but they were not familiar, so they scared me. It was not uncommon in the middle of the night for me to wake up and hear whispers, as I would call them, when asking my mom. She figured they were just bumps in the night and typical kids' nightmare material. I tried often to explain to her that it was more than that they sounded different from one another the way people's voices do. On some nights I would get so scared of these whispers that I would sleep in my mom's bed with her. It was an added bonus that the bathroom was directly outside of her bedroom door for my late night tinkles. I should add at this point that when walking out in the hall of the bathroom, you look directly down the stairs that would lead you to the living room on the first floor, as my mom's bedroom was on the second floor. On one such night around Christmas, I woke and felt the need to relieve myself. I walked out from the door and distinctly heard the phrase, "Look," and to my astonishment, a red light, almost like a spotlight, was cast upon the wall at the very bottom of the stairs. The light had no other source. It was by itself, and I was transfixed by it. Being a little kid and it only being a few days from Christmas, I knew that it was what this light was. It was Santa. How else could he get into my house and to know I was being a good boy? I was so excited I began walking down the stairs to greet him, picking up my pace after the second step as it began to creep off the wall and fade into the darkness of my living room. Oh my gosh, I'm not going to have time to finish this story. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize it was this long. Thank you guys for joining us. Appreciate your patience, your kindness, your support, and check us out on Facebook, and we'll see you next week.
Woo!